Well, hello again, do-it-yourselfers. Terry Peterman, the Internet Electrician, and welcome to another video short on current topics. Here on YouTube and of course at my website, electrical-online.com. In this video, I've got a little project in the backyard here on my deck. We had about an 8-foot covered deck that was 30 feet long, so we got that covered in with a metal awning with a glass roof. And of course then that left a need for some electrical work in it. Needed to get a couple lights out there or some kind of lighting, a couple receptacles added. I've got an entertainment center out there that I'm going to put in with the television. You'll see that on one of my other videos showing the mounting of that. But now it was time for the electrical. And also at this house we just purchased this spring, the garden shed didn't have any electrical to it. So I combined the project. I added from an outdoor panel. I added a run of PVC conduit through the entire outdoor deck area, dropping off for some receptacles here and there. I modified the lighting from the existing house circuit, which I'll show you, and I combined with the PVC as well. And then I carried that PVC on to the end of the patio, dropped down the wall, underground, and up into my shed, where I wired the shed just as any open frame construction type of wiring method in there. So without further ado, let's get going, and I'll just show you a few of the things I did in this. I couldn't give you every step of the way. I have weather constraints here. It's fall on Vancouver Island. We only get, it seems like, about 6 hours of daylight, so you got to work with that, and the rain and the mud. So I can show you what I can. Let's have a look. All right, so here I am outside with the start of my project here for the patio area, to get the outdoor electrical done on this outside wall, which is now basically partially inside. I'm standing right here in the middle of the mud. It used to be a flower bed, so again, excuse the whole yard. Still in the middle of renovations, and the yard is going to be the last thing, and with the middle of muddy November on the island, not likely to get done till spring. But anyway, so here is that outdoor panel I have. There's 2 spots left on either side. Now this is wired for the hot tub, but I wired 60 amp out here to feed this, and then it's a 40 2-pole for my GFI for the hot tub itself. So I've got 2 spots here on either side that I can run 2 other 15 amp circuits. I'm going to run one around the yard here for all yard lighting and some convenience outlets throughout the backyard. And the other one's going to be for this area underneath my covered patio, which includes my television. I'm going to have a stereo out here, and then onto the garden shed, as again mentioned in the opening. So here's how I did this. Now I used Liquid Tight Flex, a short little piece here of Liquid Tight Flex that they use. I used that more like an offset for this fitting here, because I couldn't find an offset 1/2 inch at the Home Depot where I was at, and besides that I needed a little more of an offset bend, so I just used one of these flexible pieces to start my run, and then from here on everything's going to be straight and level. So you can see I offset it down. There's a little tip, if never offset up, because then that way water does run on it, it's going to try to migrate into your panel. So offset that down, so any rain that would fall on here. This is a watertight connection, or basically a watertight, although it's going into a knockout on the side of this panel. Weatherproof panel. This is a gasketed fitting, so it should be watertight, but nonetheless, you want that water to, if it's going to hit here, flow downhill and drip off here. So then all glued into PVC fittings, going into an FSC box, PVC. This will be a receptacle. My barbecue sitting right here, so this will be for the rotisserie, probably some extra lighting for it. And then I 90'd up, and we'll go on from here and show you the rest of the conduit run, which is almost done except for the little piece to go across to the shed, which I'll show you the progress and the completion of that, getting power into my garden shed here that wasn't wired. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of a less steady camera shot here, because I'm going to follow this conduit along. So that first outlet I'll put there will be a GFI, so I'll use a regular 15 amp breaker, single pole. All the stuff I have out here, one circuit is plenty for it, so it's just basically a convenience circuit with some receptacles and some lighting. So follow that conduit up, that'll be a GFI receptacle, and then I'll feed on the load side of that all the rest of the stuff here. So up past my outdoor light. Now using conduit on the outside of the building here, I debated whether using conduit PVC, EMT, or wire mold, but being I've got a dull gray vinyl siding on here, the gray PVC kind of blended in, and I think I'm going to end up doing something different on the outside of this house anyway. And so when I do that, I'm going to put all this wiring inside the walls. So anyway, now to be as less obtrusive as possible and less noticeable, that conduit blends in fairly well. So there it's running just underneath the eave, all along that vinyl siding. And then I'll show you what I got going behind the television. So that conduit then went into an octagon box, a 4-outlet octagon box, which I used at that other bend, as you noticed, at the other end of this run. Then that's going to be a receptacle right there for the television. Right now I've got some temporary power just kind of run off of my outdoor light that used to be a patio door there that you see to the left of the television. So there was an outdoor light switch and an outlet box that I've just got moretted off or spliced through hot, and then that's where my power is now for the TV. But I'm going to turn that back into a light later on so that we can turn on a light from the bedroom and see if there's anything going on outside at night that we need to notice. Anyhow, up top there is going to be the receptacle for the television and the digital TV box. And then right here is going to be a switch to turn on the lights, the main lights underneath this awning, which I'm using LED tape light, which I'll show you the results of that when it's finished. Tape light inside the I-beam, the white I-beam of this awning, so it really throws a nice soft light. And then all the way down there to another outlet box. This is where my stereo system is going to sit, surround sound underneath the television. And then as you can see, we're going to carry on to the other side and show you where I'm going to feed that shed. And there's my trench done and ready for the conduit to go across to the shed. Didn't quite get the 18 inches I would have liked to, but we had rocks and roots in the way, and besides that, this is going to be capped off with concrete next week. We'll be pouring the pad between the existing pad there that you see on the regular patio pad, and then over to the shed I'm going to pour that level with concrete. So the main thing is mechanical protection for that conduit and wire. That's why you either go deep or you got to protect it, and that concrete will be quite sufficient to protect that conduit and wire from any mechanical damage. Okay, so I just had to measure from that pipe that I had turning the corner and going down to the other 90. I just put that elbow in the ground at the level I want it, kind of marked it on the wall where it came to, and then take into account the depth of your couplings. The bell end of this conduit is about 1.5 inches, so that measurement came to 90 inches, so just cut my pipe. I use a reciprocating saw. You can use a hacksaw and numerous other things you can use to cut it, but I find a reciprocating saw is quick, makes the job go nice and fast. And then make sure you clean out your burrs. There's none here, of course, and none here. These are factory ends, but after you've cut it, you're going to have a rough edge there with burrs. You can take a rag or some emery cloth or even just a leather glove and clean those out. And then you should prime your conduit. Clean it for sure, but some use a primer and some just use the PVC cement. You don't need a lot of this, but you do need enough to make sure that you're vulcanizing the plastic, so the PVC. So I just go round and round and round after it's all clean, and then shove it into that bell end. Trying to work with one hand and film at the same time. So shove it right in there all the way and twist at the same time. And then slowly turn until you can't turn it anymore. And you've got a nice joint there, nice watertight glue job. I'll just show you cutting. I need to trim a little bit off of this piece of conduit, about 1 inch. So with my recip saw, and there you can see, pretty nice clean cut. Okay, so there you see my pipe, the 90's on, ready to go across to the garden shed. Don't strap anything down yet because you need to be able to move things around till you get that proper length going over to the shed and up to the LB. So just leave everything not strapped quite yet. But before you cut that piece between the shed and the 90, make sure you're level coming down the wall of the house. So just do that by measurement. cut your piece, and then make sure you're all good before you strap everything into place. All right, so I've got my conduit in place. Drilled hole sawed a hole for that LB to go in. And now I'm just going to make sure this conduit is level coming down the wall, and more important than level is lined up with what you're going to see it against, and that's the siding itself. So whether it's level or not, you want it to be parallel with that siding. So right about there is good. All the way up, hold that in place, and measure my final piece between here. 30.5 between the two. Okay, so now that that piece between is cut to the right length, and checking my distance all the way down from that trim to the conduit, it's perfectly parallel with that. Going down now into the ground. 3 straps on that length now. The last thing I'm going to do is glue that LB on, put it into the wall, and then strap that last 2-hole strap in to hold it against the side of the shed. When I mentioned try to use the bell end of the conduits as much as you can, it saves couplings, but not that they're expensive. It's just any fittings are kind of ugly, so as few fittings as you can get away with, the better, in my humble opinion. So we'll apply our cement. It's called PVC cement. Of course, I cleaned that first with the primer. Also, when you're gluing these last pieces together, make sure you don't have any dirt inside the conduit. It's a good idea before you're ready to glue to just put some tape around that so you don't get any dirt in there, but I just checked to make sure I didn't have any dirt. Put my fitting on and then slowly turn it to a point that it's the right angle. And there, my LB fits perfectly. I'll put a 2-hole strap in here. And this one I'm just going to eyeball level. Coming out of the ground, by the time the concrete's on here, concrete's going to be up to here, so if it's not perfect, you're not going to notice it, but I can get a pretty good eye shot on that. Okay, with all my conduit run, I can start pulling wire and put on devices. So I'm ready to start pulling wire now. My longest run is this one, from behind the TV in that octagon box, going all the way across the wall, 90-degree bend down the wall, underground, and over to that LB as we showed you, digging it in. So that's the longest run I've got. That's probably the only one I'm going to need a fish tape for. So here's my fish tape all ready to go. Just a little one, about a 40-footer, 50-footer from Mar. So now I need to push that fish tape in through this hole, in through the octagon, and hopefully it comes out at the LB where I can hook some wires on to feed the shed and pull them back to here. All right, so this is a fairly straightforward procedure. Make sure your fish tape has got the proper hook on so it can't get caught. Should you not be able to get all the way through there and you got to pull it back, or anytime you don't want a sharp edge on this fish tape, I'll show you how to bend a hook on a fish tape in another video if they break, because they do break once in a while. But as you see here, it's got no sharp edges. I can run my hand along there and it won't catch on anything. It'll pull right back out, not catching on a coupling or anything else. If you need to come back out with it, and when you're pulling your wire in, of course. So, in we go. It's just a stiff spring steel fish tape. A lot similar to a plumber's snake. Now when you're pushing the fish tape in, make sure you don't catch like I just did. I unspooled the fish tape first. Now I can feel that first 90, and that's the reason the code only allows up to 490s maximum total bends equaling 360 degrees, so that would include any 45s, all adding up. So basically 490s or anything that adds up to that 360 degrees. 390s is nice because you can push a tape through. Anything more than that, like I say, gets tough. So I feel that first one, kind of wiggle and shake it, by it past that 90 it goes. Now in about 10 feet, we should feel that other 90. There it is. I can feel it getting stiff to push in, so just kind of shake it. Don't try to just push it. Rattle it, and it'll wiggle its way around that 90. Here's the third one. Wiggle and push. And go check at the LB and see if the tape is out. And there it is, zooming in on the other end on that LB. As you can see, the fish tape has emerged. So now all I got to do is tie my wires on, pull them back up to this octagon box. Now all I need here is a black, a white, a hot neutral, and a ground, and then I can wire my shed using that feed. All right, so there you have it. We pushed the fish tape in, I hooked the wires onto the tape, and then I brought out my faithful assistant Sandy, and we pulled those wires back into this octagon. Now we can continue pulling the wires we need down to the rest of the outlet boxes. So with all my wires installed now, I've got the devices in place. In behind that box cover is the GFI that starts off the circuit, and then I feed on the line, or the load side I should say, the rest of the circuit here underneath my awning outdoors. So following this along, there's the start, like I said, the GFI receptacle. Moving on up to that octagon box, and as we showed you before, underneath the eave, another octagon box, and coming down to my receptacle now. It's going to be for the television, and down to the switch for the lights, and another receptacle down low which will be for my stereo system. So you may ask why these aren't weatherproof cover plates on these. That's because they don't need to be. I'm well underneath cover here, so out of the weather. I did put a receptacle weatherproof cover plate on the GFI to start the run, just because there's a chance that with the wind the rain could come in sideways and get on that receptacle. Carrying on here out from behind the television and coming down and across into the shed. Now in the shed here, I just came up to that receptacle I cut into the wall there, and I put a weatherproof cover on it because now we're basically out in the open, under the eave a little bit, but we needed a weatherproof cover there. And inside I just wired the shed with another receptacle, a switch, and I'll show you that inside. Okay, inside the shed now, just wood construction, wood studs, OSB plywood on the outside for now. That's where the wire comes in through that LB. And then I just ran a 2-wire up to that outlet box for the outside plug. And now I'm going to just talk about the wiring. I didn't show much of the wiring other than pulling in this first run. But what I did here, I used Lumex or Romex, and I fed it in from this end, but I stripped the wire, stripped the jacket off of the cable to pull it in just as single conductors. That's what the code asks you to do when you're using Romex. If you're going to bury it in conduit, they want the jacket, the external jacket removed. So I removed enough of the external jacket that from once it's inside that LB, it's just single conductor wires and pulling in through the conduit. But I wanted to leave the Romex jacket on it at this end so that I can just wire this shed as per normal and using Romex run through wood studs here. And we'll probably cover up, insulate, and finish the inside of this shed down the road. But for now, it's just wired with Romex or Lumex. And as I said, strip those conductors to feed all the way into that first junction point that was above the television. So then into that outside outlet box, it's of course protected by GFI, as is everything on this outdoor circuit. And then through the studs over to another outlet just inside the door, just a convenience receptacle in here. And then I came up out of it into a switch. And out of the switch, I used a 3-wire now and followed it up, drilled it through the roof trusses here. And I went to a receptacle box with my 3-wire, and I put a split receptacle in here. One half of that receptacle is switched and the other hot all the time. And then I went out of it, and I also just put a regular octagon box in here for a future light. So the reason I did this is because I bought a fixture here that's an LED work light workbench fixture. It's got a plug-in on it, as you can see. And so this fixture doesn't really even need a switch. It's got a remote control for it, and it's motion sensor. You can control the time it takes that you want to leave it on. It dims when there's no motion, and then it'll go off, or multiple settings you can use and control it all by this remote control. So all it really needs is power all the time. So right now I've got that fixture just plugged in up there, but I did want to wire it so that if we needed a regular fixture, that could be put into place in that octagon box, or you could hang another regular fluorescent or a LED. I'd never use anything but LED anymore, but you could plug it in up there and have it on the switch as well, or hardwire it into the octagon box. Just left myself all kinds of options here. There's that octagon box for a regular light fixture if someone wants that down the road. But for now, as soon as I open that door, this light comes on. So as a side note to the wiring I had to install in the conduit, everything was pretty straightforward. One hot, one neutral, one ground to everything for my receptacles. But here's what I did with the switching for the lighting out here. This is a 3-way switch. And over here, as an afterthought to my original conduit run, I decided I should put a switch box in this run of conduit here too. So I cut that box into my run. It's a regular FSC box as well. But what I did is I'm using this outdoor light here. And then I also ran power from that outdoor light into another box where I've mounted a transformer for LED strip lighting. So the low voltage, as you see, comes out of that flexible conduit. Ran it through the structure. And what I'm going to show you is my tape lighting, which is tucked in behind that beam, so you can't see it. But when I turn that on, it lights up that whole beam, the full length of the awning here, and gives me a great light. So I just ran that low voltage through weatherproof conduit, and as you can see there, the low voltage came out of the end of that tubing, and it just terminates there in the LVT low voltage wire. Just runs over here, and I've got it spliced to the power for the tape light. So back to the story on these switches. Everything out here is on that one circuit that comes from my weatherproof panel here. But the lighting now is actually on a different circuit. I cut in that box, and what I did is I drilled out through the back of it and put a connector on, and then I ran 3-wire through the back of this box and into my 3-way switch that's inside the house. So I used the existing house circuit. All it was is power in and power out to that light fixture that you see on the outside of the wall. So what I did is I added a 4-way switch network to this. So taking the power from inside the house and inside that 3-way switch box, ran out to here and through the conduit all the way to the other 3-way switch, which is way over here. And out of that 3-way switch then, the 2 travelers come back through my conduit and into this is an actual 4-way switch. So I got 2 travelers in, 2 travelers out, and then back inside the house to the 3-way switch, and the common goes in through the wall as it was up to that light. So a little confusing there, but what I did is I just used my conduit system to make a 4-way switch network. 3-way inside, so if you wanted to, you could turn the lights on out here without opening the door. Kind of redundant to have a 3-way inside and a 4-way just outside, but if you're out here, if you wanted to turn the lights on, you'd have to go inside to do it, but now I can turn everything on from here, or inside, or over by the television there. And here's a shot of what those LED tape lights look inside that beam. And that shines lights up that beam the whole way down the awning. And here's a three-way switch from inside the house that originally was a single pole, just power in and power out to that light, but just adding that four-way network to it. So this is now a three-way. It also turns on those outside tape lights. So that kind of wraps up the outdoor wiring and using PVC conduit and the power feed to my shed video that I showed you. Thanks for watching. I just wanted to point out a couple things. The hot tub is sitting here. This is where I mentioned in the video that my entertainment center is going to go, and you're probably wondering why the hot tub is so close to the wall. And that switch, which is GFI protected, but really I'm going to probably put a waterproof cover on here, weather-tight cover. Anyhow, the hot tub is not staying exactly right here. I struggled with deciding to have this tub underneath cover, which I do have a glass ceiling in here, which is nice to see the stars and the moon at night, or outside in the open air, which we prefer actually. And I couldn't decide where to put it, maybe inside, maybe outside, halfway. As you can see in the background here, we've got it all formed up and ready to pour concrete tomorrow. So this is going to be a 16-foot wide pad instead of only 8 feet. So what I came up with is a solution. I built the tub, I built a deck, a very sturdy deck with 8 heavy-duty casters underneath it. And then I fed my hot tub with liquid-tight flex and enough cable that it can go in and out. So what I can do is wheel it in here under the deck. It'll never be this tight to the wall. It'll be out quite a ways here. But as you can see, it rolls quite easily. And when the pad is done, on a nice summer night, you can just roll the tub right out onto the new patio in the open. So thanks again for watching. Terry Peterman, the Internet Electrician. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Leave me a comment, and I try to interact with as many comments as I can. Hit that notification bell so that way you'll know when I release a new video. Again, thanks. Terry Peterman, the Internet Electrician. Until next time.